अरे मायरे, कौन मारा मुझे?
मैंने मारा है तुझे, बोल क्या कर लेगा तू?
तेरी इतनी हिम्मत कि तूने मुझे मारा? ज़ॉम्बी, इसे अभी पकड़ लो। इसे हम ज़ॉम्बी नहीं बनाएंगे, इसे हम खाएंगे।
नहीं नहीं, उसे छोड़ दो, वो मेरा बाबू है।
पकड़ो इसे ज़ॉम्बी। तू कहाँ भाग के जाएगा? मैं तुझे पकड़ लूंगी।
अरे मम्मी, मैं तुम्हारा प्यारा सा छोटा सा नन्हा सा बाबू हूँ और तुम मुझे ही खाओगी।
तुझे तो मैं एक ही बार में खा जाऊंगी। बस एक बार पकड़ लूं तुझे।
अरे बाबू, उसे बाहर लेकर आ, हम उसे पकड़कर उसे इंजेक्शन लगाकर ठीक कर देंगे। ठीक है पापा।
जल्दी पकड़ उसे।
पकड़ो पकड़ो मुझे मम्मी।
उस बदमाश बच्चे को पकड़ के हिलाना, तब तक मैं इन दोनों को ज़ॉम्बी बनाता हूँ।
अबे चिंटू के पापा, जल्दी कुछ करो, नहीं तो तुम चिंटू और चिंकी को खो दोगे।
नहीं, ऐसा कभी नहीं होगा, मैं बचाऊंगा उन्हें। नहीं नहीं, छोड़ दे चिंकिया को, नहीं तो मैं तुझे मार दूंगा।
चल मार के दिखा।
नहीं नहीं, छोड़ दो मुझे। या! चलो अब जल्दी भागो चिंटू और चिंकी।
रुक जाओ, तुम सब मुझसे बच नहीं पाओगे।
अरे डॉक्टरवा, तू भी भाग, नहीं तो वो ज़ॉम्बी तुझे भी पकड़ लेगा।
अरे तो रुको, मैं भी आ रहा हूँ।
आओ आओ, अब यहाँ आके मुझे पकड़ो मम्मी।
तू वहीं रुक, कहीं भागना मत।
अब तुम यहीं इसी रूम में बंद रहो। मैं डॉक्टर और पापा को लेकर आ रहा हूँ।
तू मुझसे बच नहीं पाएगा। तूने मुझे फिर से धोखा दिया है।
पता नहीं बाबू को उसकी मम्मी दौड़ा कर कहाँ ले गई है। पापा, जरूर वो दोनों हमारे घर की तरफ गए होंगे, तो जल्दी चलो घर की ओर। पापा, वो देखो बाबू इधर ही आ रहा है। अरे लेकिन तुम्हारी मम्मी कहाँ है? वो तो बाबू के साथ कहीं नहीं दिख रही है। अरे बाबू, तुम्हारी मम्मी कहाँ है? वो तो तुम्हें ही पकड़ रही थी। अरे पापा, मैंने मम्मी को अपने घर के रूम में बंद कर दिया है। अब चलो मम्मी को पकड़कर उन्हें ज़ॉम्बी से इंसान बनाते हैं।
बहुत बढ़िया बाबू, तूने तो कमाल कर दिया। चलो इस बार वो नहीं बच पाएगी।
हाँ जल्दी चलो।
तुम सब बच नहीं पाओगे।
डॉक्टर, अब मम्मी को इंजेक्शन लगाकर ठीक करो।
मैं कैसे उसे इंजेक्शन लगाऊं? वो तो अंदर रूम में है।
अरे तो रूम के अंदर चले जाओ।
ना रे बाबा ना, वो मुझे खा जाएगी।
तो अब क्या करे पापा? मेरा तो कुछ भी समझ में नहीं आ रहा है चिंटुआ, कि क्या करूं मैं।
अपनी मम्मी को बेड पर रस्सी से बांध दो, तब मैं उसका इलाज करूंगा।
पिछली बार क्या हुआ था पता है ना तुझको? मम्मी रस्सी तोड़कर भाग गई थी।
तो इस बार सीकड़ से बांधना, वो लोहे के सीकड़ को नहीं तोड़ पाएगी।
लेकिन सीकड़ से मम्मी को बांधेगा कौन? अरे तुम सब मेरे ही तरफ क्यों देख रहे हो?
क्योंकि तुम अंदर जाओ और उस ज़ॉम्बी को सीकड़ से बांधो।
नहीं नहीं, मैं नहीं जाऊंगा, लेकिन मेरे पास एक उपाय है। कौन सा उपाय है? देखो ज़ॉम्बी, हमने उसे बेड से बांध दिया है। अब हम सब दरवाजा खोलेंगे और तुम उसे खा लेना।
हाँ हाँ, जल्दी दरवाजा खोलो, बहुत तेज भूख लगी है।
डॉक्टर, जल्दी से रिमोट का बटन दबाकर उसे बांध।
धोखा 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 हुआ है मेरे साथ।
अब जल्दी से इंजेक्शन लगा डॉक्टर।
तो ये लो।
मम्मी ठीक हो गई, मम्मी ठीक हो गई, मम्मी ठीक हो गई, मम्मी ठीक हो गई।
Before the sun learned how to rise gently, before the wind knew how to whisper, there was a rose that believed the world existed only to admire it. It stood at the very center of the royal garden, its petals deeper red than spilled wine, its stem straighter than the spine of a soldier. Every morning, when dew kissed its surface, the rose felt certain that even the sky paused to look at it. Birds sang nearby, not to greet the day, the rose believed, but to praise its beauty. Butterflies hovered, trembling, as if afraid of falling in love too quickly. And whenever the gardener passed, slowing his steps for just a moment, the rose swelled with pride, certain that no other flower could ever deserve such attention. It never noticed the way the smaller flowers leaned toward the same sun, or how the grass bent patiently beneath every footstep. The rose only saw itself, and in that blindness, it felt invincible. The garden was full of life and quiet struggles. The marigolds endured heat without complaint. The jasmine shared its fragrance freely at night. The old sunflower, towering near the fence, bent its heavy head each evening as if in prayer. They all spoke to one another in the language of roots and rain, but the rose rarely listened. When the wind warned of coming storms, the rose scoffed. When the clouds gathered dark and low, the rose lifted its chin and thought, "Let them come, they will only make me shine brighter." Even the thorns along its stem felt like proof of superiority, sharp and untouchable. If any flower dared to admire the rose aloud, it accepted the praise without gratitude. If any flower dared to complain of thirst or heat, the rose silently judged them as weak. Pride wrapped around its petals tighter than any bud point one summer day. Harsher than the rest, the sun burned without mercy. The soil cracked, and the garden grew quiet. Bees moved slowly, conserving strength. The gardener came less often, his own worries heavy on his shoulders. The rose felt the heat too, but it refused to bow. Its petals curled slightly at the edges, yet it told itself this only made it more dramatic, more beautiful. Nearby, a small violet drooped, its color fading. It whispered for shade, for water, for kindness. The rose heard, but remained silent. Helping was not its role, it thought. Being admired was. When night finally came, the rose stood alone in the moonlight, proud but strangely uneasy, as if the darkness were watching more closely than the sun ever had. The storm arrived without ceremony. No warning songs from birds, no gentle breeze. Just a sudden tearing of the sky and rain that fell like judgment. The garden trembled. The marigolds pressed close to the earth. The sunflower bent low. The rose stood tall, defiant, refusing to sway. Wind struck again and again, ripping at petals that had never known resistance. One by one, they fell, red against the mud. The rose screamed in silence as its beauty scattered across the soil, but pride kept it upright even as pain spread through its stem. By morning, the storm passed, leaving behind a garden bruised but alive. The rose remained standing, but it was no longer magnificent. Bare and torn, it faced the day for the first time without applause. Days followed, slow and cruel. Without its petals, the rose felt invisible. The birds no longer lingered. The butterflies passed without pause. The gardener walked by without stopping. For the first time, the rose noticed the others. It saw how the jasmine still offered fragrance despite broken branches. It saw how the sunflower, though bent and scarred, continued to turn toward the light. It even noticed the small violet, newly blooming again, fragile yet determined. Shame settled deep into the rose's roots, heavier than any storm. It realized that while it had been busy standing above the world, it had never truly been part of it. When the gardener finally knelt beside the rose, it expected judgment. Instead, gentle hands cleared the soil, tied a soft support around the weakened stem, and watered the ground carefully. The rose felt something unfamiliar then, not pride, but gratitude. As days turned into weeks, new buds formed, smaller than before, less dramatic, but alive. The rose listened now. It learned when the wind spoke. It learned when the soil was thirsty. It learned that standing tall did not always mean standing alone. When its new petals finally opened, they were not as flawless as the old ones, but they carried a quiet strength, the kind that did not demand attention to be why the time another summer arrived, the rose had changed. It no longer believed the world existed to admire it. It shared shade with the violet when the sun burned too hot. It bent slightly in the wind, not out of fear, but wisdom. And when visitors came to the garden, some still stopped to admire the rose, but now they lingered longer, noticing the harmony around it. The rose understood then that beauty without humility is fragile, but beauty rooted in kindness can survive storms. And in that understanding, the rose found something greater than admiration. It found belonging, and in belonging, it finally learned how to truly bloom.